Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us. My name is Adam Gilbert. I'm a Senior VP of Sales here at SalesForce, and we're thrilled to have you for what I think is going to be a fantastic discussion about selling in this environment. Before I introduce our key speaker today, it's been interesting. I've been a part of the Sandler world now. I hate to date myself, but since 1998 was when I was first exposed to it as a young seller, and I have to say, of everything I've been through, it was the one thing that shaped my W-2 and career trajectory in a way that nothing else did. So I'm really pleased to have Sandler here. And, if you're like any seller, there's no shortage of challenges in any environment. But I think the last 4 months have probably given us all a new set of tests to navigate. And I get a chance to talk to a lot of sales leaders and sellers in my travels here at SalesForce. And I think everybody's trying to figure out, how do I restart building pipeline, and how do I make progress in key accounts in the midst of all this? How do I get the whole team engaged? And I'll go ahead and introduce Dave, but Dave Mattson is the CEO of Sandler. He's a best-selling author. He's a sales and management thought leader and a keynote speaker. And really happy to have you here, Dave, to help us figure out how to navigate some of these waters. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Adam, for the introduction in 1998. That's a long time. So unfortunately, I have you beat as far as my longevity at Sandler, but huge fan of SalesForce. I think we've been working with SalesForce for probably since 18 years, maybe. And obviously, you guys are the #1 platform, so it's an honor to be here. And so, group, here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to accelerate growth through the recovery. And as Adam said, there's all these questions that we normally wouldn't have had that are popping up. And we're going to cover as much as we can today in our 45 minutes. Here's the challenge that I have. On the line, we've got CROs, we have sales leaders, we have customer success, sales enablement. We also have inside sales and then outside sales. We've got a smattering of everybody. So this is, not a, hey, 45 minutes just for CROs. I'm going to give you a lot of information. Here's my offer. If in fact I say something we didn't cover enough, which may happen, just ping me. I'm happy to give you the 201, 301 on anything that I've said. I'll send you the podcast. We've got tons of it. So where's all this stuff coming from that I'm going to share with you over the next 45 minutes? A lot of you know Sandler. Adam came from, went through Sandler some time ago, but we've been around for 50 years and we have morphed so many times over time based on technology. And, when we first started, we were talking about walk-ins. No one knows what walk-ins now. And now it's, how do I sell in Zoom? And, how do I start my sales call in today's world? And can I even make sales calls in today's world? So, that's there. We've trained 31,000 people last year. And just talking about morphing, since March, we've done 3,000 virtual boot camps, which is just amazing. So, we've won tons of awards for sales and sales leadership, but here's what we do. We provide content, tools, and training to any revenue generating individual who is customer facing. That's what we do. So I'm going to give you stuff that comes out of battle tested material that we have since we've been working with hundreds of thousands of people. So that's where it's going to come from. So let's kind of start. I always kind of look at salespeople, sales leaders, like athletes, right? Let me ask you a question. Do you think when I hit the pros, you can pick your sport, it doesn't matter. Do they work harder or do they kind of slack back a little bit once they've hit it? Do they say, hey, I've worked all my life to get here and whoo, thank goodness I'm here. I'm just kind of have to rest. Well, we do a ton of executive coaching and sports. They work 10 times harder, right? So when they get there, they work 10 times harder because they know they've got to continually sharpen their skills. I don't care what sport, what name you pick. If you're making $25, $30 million a year, they're still doing that practice. They're still going and doing their reps. They're doing all the things that they did when they started as a rookie because you've got to just get it done. You've got to do muscle memory. And we've got to bring our A game every single time because somebody, certainly in professional sports, wants our job, right? Wants our job. But here's the thing that I'm going to suggest to you also is that they watch the tape, right? Any sport, they'll go back and watch the tape. They look at their competitors, they watch what they did themselves, and they try to figure out, okay, how do I adjust, right? I'm going to analyze it, I'm going to adjust, and then I'm going to master. So they do that, they're constantly improving. And I think that's what we need to do as salespeople, as sales leaders, because are we born or are we made? Well, I'm going to tell you that we are made, right? I'm pretty sure my parents didn't say the first time I popped into the world, since no one had gone into sales in my family ever. You know, I was supposed to be a doctor, lawyer, accountant, architect, the list goes on. No one said, oh my goodness gracious, we've had our first salesperson here. No, I bumped into sales, actually, like most of you did. And so we have to continually get better. And so we can use this time, right? We can use COVID to really analyze what we're doing, what's going on, what do we need to change? Do I need to change my 30-second commercial, which you should be based on what's going on today? Do I need to change my pain statements? Do I need to change the way that I'm presenting? Because when I'm doing it on virtual, it's completely different. It's hard to engage individuals when you're doing a virtual sales call. All of those things, that's what we have to start paying attention to. And as I said, now's the time, right? Because McKinsey or anyone else will come and say, you've got to reskill or upskill. And that's really what we have to constantly do. You know, you and I both know that everything's always changing in sales. It always does. We've got different players, you know, we're talking to different clients, and now we've got this, you know, this cloud over us, and we're not really sure what to do, but we can use this time to look at the tape, as I talked about, to get our talk tracks down. You know, I think salespeople should know their talk tracks like this, right? Those are the 50 things maybe that under any circumstance you should be able to recite. And the reason for that, obviously, is that you should know your part, so you're focused in on the buyer. See, I believe you should have you-focused selling. I shouldn't worry about what I'm going to say. My mind's going 1,000 miles a minute while you're talking. That means I'm not listening. And so, you know, what are those talk tracks for both salespeople and sales leaders? Look, I think sales leaders are the most important people in that organization. Why? Because our teams generate revenue. We've got to make sure that they are operating on optimal capacity, right? But the problem is 43% of sales leaders go into that position without any experience whatsoever. So here's our first chat box. I'd like to make this as interactive as I can. The first chat box is, hey, let me ask you a quick question. How many hours have you done last month to sharpen your skill, right? To sharpen your skill, how many hours did you put in the last month? Whether it was, hey, I'm analyzing CRM, I'm trying to figure out where my gaps are. Hey, I'm redoing my talk tracks because what worked in January is not working today. Put it in your chat box, just type it in. How many hours do you think that you've put in, rough guess, over the last 30 days in order to sharpen your skills? If you put that in your chat box for a second. So let's see. Well, maybe chat's not working. We got a lot of people here, so let's go on. Here's the thing. I think most people are spending less than we should. We should be spending more time. Athletes are spending almost 9 hours a day perfecting their craft. And I think salespeople should be doing that as well. There's a big difference between, you know, being frozen. Yeah, so here they come, 15 hours, that's awesome, right? 20 hours, awesome, that's fantastic. You are ahead of the curve. That's not a norm, but kudos to you. And so let's kind of shift then and say to ourselves, okay, what are we going to look at? Well, I believe that you should really pay attention to what we call the success triangles, especially in today's environment. What does that mean? Everybody wants to improve, but how do we maintain that improvement? How do we maintain it? How do we stick to it? How do we not become that statistic that goes to the gym January 1st and then quits by January 20th? How do we do that, right? Or how do I lose the weight, but yet in like 6 months, it's all back? How do I sustain that? How do I sustain my sales momentum? Well, you need 3 areas. You need attitude, mindset, behaviors, and techniques. Now, sales leaders and salespeople, we're going to gravitate towards technique. What do I say? How do I say it? What are the nuances? That's what we do. And that's great. But you tend to leave, whether you've got the skill from a seminar or anywhere else, you get all pumped up, you go and try it, and then you go right back to what we were doing. So I'm going to suggest that you need all three. You need to figure out, how do I have to think about things? How often should I be doing it from a behavioral perspective? And what are my techniques? Let's take prospecting as an example. Prospecting mindset could be, hey, this is a bad time to make outbound calls. I don't think this is the right time for my people to jumpstart that funnel again, that pipeline. You mean my pipeline's dry, but I don't know when to start it. That mindset is there. Or, I'm not really going to do the behaviors now, but when things calm down, I'm going to kick it in. So I'm only going to do maybe 1 or 2 a week when I should be doing 5 or 6 a day. Or, hey, I'm using my old scripts in today's world, doesn't work. So let's break these down before we get to some of the tactics and strategies. Let's talk about mindset. Well, if you've got good behavior and you've got good technique, but your mind is not up, right? Your mindset's not there, chances are we're going through the motions. And what I mean by that is this. I think success resides between your ears. I know that I've gone into calls where I felt defeated before we got there. And I promise you that it's going to end up that way too, right? I'm a hacker when it comes to golf, but when I think, hey, this is going horribly wrong, I'm embarrassing myself in front of other people, it goes horribly wrong, right? So we can talk ourselves into a great call or not. And you and I both know sales is a profession where we lose more than we win. I mean, we're losing all the time. So you've got to have it. Look, we're going to win some, we're going to lose some. It's okay, right? So the head stuff is absolutely there. And I used a golf analogy. I'll tell you real quick. Regardless, if my mind says that when I come upon a water hole, that there's no way I'm going to get it past the water, even though for the last 3 years it's been no big deal, but today's not the day. I had this negative self-talk going on. Then what do? Well, I kind of give up in a way. You know what I do? I walk back to the cart, I go into my golf bag, and I pull out one of these things, right? And these things are called water balls. These are things that you would not normally use. But a water ball is, I could care less because I expect it to go into the pond. I expect it to go into the lake. And so I think we've all done it. I've got a whole thing of water balls, but I think that's really what we have to think about. And if we think about mindset, that's the hardest thing to coach to. That's the hardest thing to adjust. I mean, I'll do me and see if this is anything that may have happened to you. I grew up and my parents said the following to me: don't talk to strangers, never talk about money, and don't ask people how much they make, how much things cost. That's very rude. Never speak unless spoken to, so don't ask good questions. They always said, hey, respect your elders, respect others that are higher than you are, whether it's age or position, whatever. Now fast forward, and I grew up that way, and I actually tell my kids the same thing. But now I come into the world, I work for you, and you tell me, hey, go call in every stranger you can, get budget on the table as quickly as possible. I want you to ask good questions, and I want you to have equal business stature. So when you're in front of a C-suite and you're not a C-suite person, you should act as if you belong there. You have the cure to whatever their pain is. And that's tough. It's tough. And I think people are also caught in comfort zones. So as sales leaders, comfort zone, there's a billion reasons why, but that's when you see somebody that's working at maybe 60% of their capacity. Why is that? They could do so much more, but they're stuck in a comfort zone for whatever reason. And we all have comfort zones. The trick is to identify, hey, that person on my team is on a comfort zone, or I'm on a comfort zone, and here's how I'm going to adjust to it. So these are some of the highlights that I want to share with you, but that is important. The head stuff, although no one wants to hear about it, helps you drive the way you're going to behave and therefore the techniques that you're going to use. So let's talk about the other ones for a minute. Well, if my head's on straight, right, I got my mindset's good, I have great technique, but I have poor behavior, then I'm probably very sporadic, right? That's when I go from made a huge sale and I've got a big lull, right? I go from feast to famine because there's absolutely no rhyme or reason to my process. Or you've got the other one, which is that, you're doing a little bit, but we could be doing more. I think the issue is this. Most salespeople do not know from a behavioral perspective what I should be doing every single day in order to hit my numbers. Now, even in today's situation with the pandemic, listen, you've got to up your behavioral plan. You've got to change your behavioral plan that says, I'm going to call as many existing clients as I can because now's the time to reach out. Now's the time to offer my support, because when things clear up, whenever that is, we will be first in line. We will be at least thought of X. So all that stuff, I think your behavioral plan should probably go maybe 40% of what it was, higher than what it was last year, just to break even. I know ours is about 45% higher from a behavioral perspective, just to make sure that we're maintaining even flow. So you've got to adjust all the time. So here's the question. Does your CRM have clearly defined stages? Because you should know what your behavior should be in each of the stages, right? I should know, for instance, hey, I've got to make sure that I'm doing the necessary behaviors to get to the second stage, right? So if I'm doing discovery and then I'm going to go over to demo, if that's your sales process, then I've got to have all the right behaviors over here in order, you can figure that out if you have poor technique or if you're not doing enough of them, right? So you're trying to connect, and you have a relevant conversations, from relevant conversations, and then you move over to contacts, whatever the flow is for you, depending on how you sell, you've got to have a behavioral plan. Here's how you as a leader will know, and you as a salesperson will know if you may not have what we call a cookbook or a behavioral plan. Maybe if you have 5 or 6 products, and this is what drives CROs crazy all the time. They've got a suite of products, but yet the SalesForce is only selling a small amount of them. Why is that? Why is that? Is it because the rest of your products are no good? No. Is it because the customer doesn't need your products? No. It's because I'm comfortable with that. And that's where I'm spending all of my time. And I don't have a behavioral plan that says, hey, look, you've got to spend at least 20% of your time in existing accounts or in net new accounts talking about this. Or you've got to invite 2 partners per month into the accounts that are product specialists, whatever it is. But I know once you can create a behavioral plan that is across the board, then I have a much greater probability of more products and services in my existing account, which means I'm sticky, right? Because we want to land, expand, renew, right? So that's where we are. And that's very important. So sales leaders, if you don't have a behavioral plan, you should. So let me ask you a chat box question. And here it is. Do you have a behavioral plan that you consistently follow? Not one that's, logged over there in the computer, not one that you were told to do. And by the way, sales leaders, you should have a behavioral plan as well. How many times we're coaching, how many times we're role playing, not reactively. This is all proactive. So real quick, how many are doing it? All right, so good. All right, so look, we're doing some behavioral plans, but the fact of the matter is we're not doing enough of them. And I think we know that. That is the #1 problem when I walk into organizations and they say, my pipe isn't full, or I'm already, I'm back end loaded, there's nothing in the front end. Well, there's nothing in the front end because we're not doing all the behaviors necessary to kick it through, right? So that's important. No one wants to hear about it. If you came to work for me, I'm handing you a behavioral plan every time you start with me, and we're adjusting it based on what my CRM says, because if I'm doing the behaviors, but I'm not getting the result, either I've got poor technique or I'm not doing enough of the behaviors, and I can become a scientist and tweak it. I can up it. And that's really what you should be managing as a leader, is the behavior, not the outcome, which I know is completely counterintuitive, right? We want our quotas, and we're going to talk about behavior in about 5 minutes here, but everybody wants the quota, of course, that's how we keep score. But as a leader, you should know I can't control who says yes or no. I can't control who's going to give me that amount of money to hit the quotas. I can only control my own behavior. And if I'm doing what it takes every single day, then I have a much higher probability of blowing through my numbers. When we do a cookbook or a behavioral plan for clients, they, on average, will hit their numbers at least 2 months ahead of time because they're doing all those things. They have a well-rounded portfolio. They're doing all the things. I'm winning every day. Remember I said to you, hey, salespeople lose more than they win? We do. But if you knew you had to, for instance, part of your behavioral plan is you've got to do 5 LinkedIn letters per day, and you're doing that, you can check the box. That's a win. I feel good about that. Now, no one bought, but if I'm doing all of that, I know statistically they're going to do it because we're going to talk a little bit about why in a couple seconds, but super, super important. Let's talk about something else. So I've got great mindset, right? I've got awesome behavior, but my technique is poor. All right, so that just means I feel good about it. I'm doing the behavior, but I'm no good at it, right? So that's the easiest thing to fix, in my opinion, right? Is the technique. The other ones takes a little longer to get your head around, but technique is what do I say? And when do I say it? How do I say it, right? What are the nuances? How do I ask those tough questions without coming across as aggressive? How do I do that? And that's all the technique stuff. How do I handle, I need a bigger discount? Or how do I handle the fact that, hey, you sound the same as your competitor, right? What are we doing? So we're going to talk a little bit about some techniques right now, but that's important. That's where sales leaders, you should be role playing. That's where salespeople, you should be going to your battle cards and start those talk tracks. For me, I'm introverted and sales does not come naturally, but I would practice my techniques so I knew my part of it, and I would then forget everything and go on that call because then I could focus in on my buyer. Then I could listen, then I could react because I already know my part. It's when you don't have a grasp on technique that you tend to have these conversations within your own mind when the other person is speaking. And that's not good. And you know that, and we know that. So work on your talk tracks. There's about literally 50 things that you should know, but there's much more than talk tracks, right? There's physiology and all the things that you need to do now that we're talking virtually, right? So what's your technique virtually? What are we doing here? So those are the types of things that you have to think about. So if I can come back for a second, we're going to talk about behavior in a minute, but think about whatever you roll out, sales managers, whatever you want your people to continually do, or you as a salesperson. Let's pretend for a second you don't really have good sales management. So you're kind of managing yourself in a way. Think about, regardless of what I'm attacking, what's my mindset? What's the behavior? How often? How much? When should I be doing it? And then work on technique. That's important. Let's talk about something that you should pay attention to as we think about what's going on in today's world. Well, our second big tip for you is, listen, I think that you should care for your accounts and care for your account plans. What does that mean exactly? Well, care is an acronym, right? If you look at your portfolio and you look at your business, chances are you've got categories. And the categories probably are keeps, right? Care, keeps. What accounts do we want to keep? They're profitable, they love us, we bring value to them, so we love them. So we want to protect them, right? Because a job of a salesperson, if you think about it, is to protect the relationships that I have and then really go plunder somebody else's relationships. Unless you're in a unique industry where the buyers have never bought what you do. Chances are you're dethroning somebody. So you've got to make sure that you're doing all the right things with each person in the buyer network. And that's kind of something that I always shook my head around because most salespeople have a good relationship with the one person in that organization, but they don't have a great relationship overall within the organization. And when that person leaves, you get thrown out, baby gets thrown out with the bathwater. It's kind of what happens. It's no fault of yours, but you didn't have a relationship with the whole buyer network. And we're not here to talk about that today, but that's the keeps. Attains. Those are the groups of people that are on your list. You want them, you want to go get them, that are on your hit list. And those are the people that you would like the opportunity to do business with. Recaptures. Those are the people who did business with us in the past, but have stopped. Maybe long before you arrived at the company, maybe we messed up. Maybe there was a new management change on the other side and we didn't have that relationship. So they went with a competitor because that's who that new, CEO loved. Whatever the reason, go after them, right? Part of your cookbook, part of your behavioral plan should be, how much time should I go after recapture? We'll talk about expand. How am I going? Where am I going into the organization to expand, right? There's probably other products and services. There's other groups. How do I make sure that I become sticky? How do I get other products and services into my customer that I know will bring value? And those are the 3 or 4 categories, that you need to consider as you look, especially today with what's going on. Because the comfort zone of most people is, I'm going to spend 100% of my time on the keeps. I'm going after my existing customers. We're going to love them because my mindset, right? It's inappropriate to make an outbound call, or it's inappropriate to ask for a conversation, whatever it may be. But I'd spend most of my time there. And if you did a time analysis as a sales leader, you're probably going to find that that's where the majority of time is spent. But we should be doing the following. We should determine, what is our action plan for each of these 4? Because you should be spending a certain amount of time on all of them if it's appropriate, because I know, for instance, we've got certain salespeople in the room that this won't be applicable. I get it. But if it is, and you do have the opportunity, you should say, I'm going to spend, 40% of my time on my keeps. I'm going to spend 30% of my time on my attains, and I'm going to do X amount of expands. You do the ratios, but that's the guardrails that I would suggest as a leader you give your people. Now, you should have approaches for each. There is a different approach, there's a different script, there's a different behavioral plan for each and every one. It is rare that people really segment their buyers in this way. So this is an important concept. People are gravitating towards it. I can only give you an example for us. In the pandemic, look, of course we're doing the keeps, of course we're doing the expands, but we also spent a percentage of our time on the recaptures. We went to people who used to do business with Sandler, but for whatever reason, our fault or theirs, or no fault, they're not doing it. We had an incredible amount of people come back into the fold from recapture. But if we had ignored that, if we're simply reacting, we're simply just focusing on one because it made me feel comfortable, not as an organization, but as an individual contributor, that's a problem. So this is a very proactive way for you to engage everybody in the portfolio. So that's the important part. So here's the chat box. I love your interaction. Where do you spend the majority of your time? So think about that for a second. Do I spend the majority of my time in my keeps, my attains, right? My recaptures, or my expands? Where do you spend the majority of your time? So absolutely. So that's not any different, but what you're going to find is really figure out what it is for you. Why is that important right now? Because your ratios probably change now than they did. Listen, if you're an inside, you're doing probably, for the most part, you're going to do attains, right? You're going to do expands. Customer success obviously does different things than outside. So you have to just get your technique, your behavior down for all of those. Now, if you don't do, right, I don't do expands, disregard that. That's okay. If you do all 4, have a healthy balance. That's my point. Have a healthy balance. And so we have made incredible inroads with our customers using this simple model. And again, if I've said anything at a 101 and you want a 201, 301, just tell me and I'm happy to send it to you. What else is going on out there? Well, I think you should probably start to look at your ideal account profile, right? So we want to figure out, who should we be targeting? And in today's world, who you should be targeting may be a subset of your overall portfolio. It may be somebody completely different, but you got to get back and say, who do I best serve? Where do I offer the best value, the most value in my buyer network? What is it? I know for us, for instance, we've redone that easily. And we're trying to figure out, okay, well, once that industry is hopping. So we're going to spend some time there where we've changed. We're going to let this one lie a little bit because they're frozen. They can't operate. They're not going to operate. So we've changed it. Once you decide what your account profile is, here's what you have to do. Create battle plans, battle cards. What is that exactly? Well, you have to say, here's my ideal profile. Here's the persona in the organization that I want to target, right? Here's my 30-second commercial. Here are my 4 or 5 pain indicators that I'm looking for that I'll throw out in my 30-second commercial. Here's my pain transition points. Here's my third-party story that I'm going to use. Here's some experts within my company I can leverage. Once you have that, then we're much better off when you make that first impression, because time is of the essence, right? No one has a lot of time today. So you've got to impact as quickly as possible when you initially engage. Super important. This will help you go right in, so you're saying the right things at the right time to the right people. And that's important. Now, there's some other things that we should do. One is account plans. And I know this is where people say, either I don't need those, I don't do those. But this is a good opportunity for us to make sure we all are using the same account planning process, and then bake it into SalesForce. Bake it in there. There's no reason why it's living somewhere else. Force the issue. Why is an account plan important? Look, it's your roadmap. It's your roadmap. If you know, for instance, that of the care that you're only doing, attain, and you're only doing expand, then, create that account plan by account. That how am I going to get that? How am I going to expand? How am I going to get in there, right? It's all the things that you probably do piecemeal. It just gives you an overall picture. Now, I'm not a big fan of a one-year account plan. I think that is, a big waste because too much time changes. But overall goals for the year for the account, that's fine. I love 90-day account plans because that's manageable for a sales leader. Hey, let's look at the 90-day account plan. It's also very manageable for a salesperson. It's relevant. Sometimes when account plans are not relevant, we put them in the, store them in the computer. Before we weren't traveling, I put them in the trunk. So when my sales leader comes, I can go and just blow it off. Oh yeah, of course, my account plan. I'm working on that all the time. So you and I both know what that means. But now is a good time to do it. And bake it in. Bake it in. It may not be glorious, but it'll help you become sharper and more proactive. So let's talk about overall our pre-call planning and debriefing of calls. I think that people that follow a system for pre-call and debriefs are 80% more likely to exceed quota. Think about that, 80%. So if I had an 80% higher probability, chances are I would pay attention to that. And that's important. See, consistency right now is super important in today's environment. And so these are the important things that I want to share with you over the next couple minutes here. So let's talk about pre-call planning. You're going to say to yourself, I have heard about pre-call planning since the first time I went into sales. That's a yawner. And I get it. But here's the thing. I think you need to be the best you can be on every single call. And I'm probably guessing that that's not true. And a lot of the salespeople that I run into over the years, their pre-call planner is, in the old days, on the elevator on the way up, or on the way over to the call, or 15 minutes before we jump on a call. No way. Hey, look, you are a professional. Do you think that the athletes do pre-call? Of course, you know what it is? They look at the tape. That's pre-call planning. They know exactly what they're going to be doing. I want my doctor to do a pre-call. I want them to check it out beforehand. I don't want them to wing it. I certainly don't want my pilot to wing it. I don't want my lawyer to wing it. So everybody, you are a professional. So just take some time when everything just kind of shut down and say, what am I doing on that particular call? And play air traffic controller, right? You should spend 25% of your call time on pre-call planning, bar none. Now, it doesn't have to be a 65-page document. By the way, it should live within SalesForce, right? There's some easy questions that you should do, and I'm happy to send you mine. But simple things like, okay, who are we calling on, right? All right, how much time do we have? What's the agenda? What's our outcome? What are our top 5 questions? What could we be asking? How are we going to respond? Those are just simple things that if you thought about it, then when you're going, you're more active again, possibility to be proactive. Because I've got my part done, and I'm always hit that. Get your part done. So pre-call planning. Look, here's the thing. Sales leaders, you should demand pre-call planning. But also for our sales leaders here today, it is the greatest coaching tool of all time, because you can coach a salesperson on a particular call before it happens. How nice is that, right? I can shape what they're going to say and how they're going to say it, and all the things that need to be shaped that you're hoping to shape, right? Unfortunately, you're doing it on a debrief ahead of time. Now you're going to say, I don't have enough time for that. And that's what salespeople say. And that's what, unfortunately, some sales leaders say. Or here's the one that I always love. I've been doing this for 24 years. There's nothing that they could say that I have not heard. Okay, I get it. But most of the time, chances are that's not accurate. You know, I hear people say they got 24 years of experience, and you look at the CRM numbers, you probably find out they had 1 year's experience 24 times, right? So, you know, every situation's different. They need the best of the best. Let's get it done. You've got to approach, you've got to do that. Fix it ahead of time. So here's the question before we talk about the next. How many of us have an account, a pre-call planner, right? You know where it is, not, hey, I think there's one in the archives. Yes, there's one somewhere. You have one, and you consistently use it. Consistently use it. Like for instance, when you're filling that out, I demand in our company that you will not do a team sell without an account, without a pre-call planner. Not doing it. So if you as an individual sales rep decide that you're going to risk not doing a pre-call planner, well, if there's a team selling situation, no way. Because the farther you progress in the funnel, the more expensive it is, the more people are involved, the more I need to know. You and I both know that we've all been on calls that were our accounts in a team sales situation, and somebody blew it up, not on purpose. But most of the time it could be done when you had a pre-call plan, right? You said, look, if you did all the things I just mentioned, chances are they also would adjust. So that's really important. I talk to sales reps all the time. Hey, my manager, I don't want to do that. They love you for it. Leadership will love you if you say, let's do a pre-call planner before our call. And as I said, sales managers, the best coaching tool of all time. Let's talk about the debriefs. Very few organizations, very few salespeople do a really good call debrief. But the quicker you do one, the better off you're going to be, because your memory, you know exactly what's there. You say things like, hey, I should have asked those 4 questions, jot it down, jot it down. Hey, we did a team sell, you know, the following, you're going to do this, get it done here, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. Then start working out roles and responsibilities. The longer you wait, the more fantasy kicks in about how well it was, right? You know it. Look, I've been on the worst call of my whole life. I knew it. I would have said that on a debrief, but as a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks go by, you know what I've rationalized over time? I did the best I can. They were a terrible buyer. I was a stud, terrible buyer. But if I was honest, that's not accurate. So debriefs, have it loaded in to your CRM. It's important. Again, happy to give you mine, but just spend some time getting it done. And it's hard when you're jumping from one call to another. I get it. So if there's a period of time that you can do it in an hour, get it done. Let's talk about some other things because we got a lot to do. Measure your behaviors. Now we talked about that, and super important. But what you have to figure out is if you've got peaks and valleys, and that's a symptom of you don't necessarily are tracking your behaviors, it's super important. So you've got to make sure, are you looking at your funnel metrics? Are you looking at your matrix, right? So what's my conversion rate here? How do I do that? But if I don't have the behaviors down, being a scientist and really leveraging CRM, see, I don't understand why people treat CRM as a compliance issue. It's the greatest dashboard for you to self-adjust of all time. And so that's really what we have to be doing. Now, I ask you, sales leaders, how many times do you call out somebody on your sales team that's doing the behaviors? Maybe not as often as you should, because most sales managers spend a lot of time telling them how to improve, what to do better, what to fix. And that's okay. But think about if you were to call people out saying, awesome at this. When people know that they do a good job, they tend to repeat it, right? But if you don't spend any time on that, they may not know that that's actually a win. So it may be somewhat counterintuitive, but super important. You've got to make sure that you've got that behavioral plan and it tracks to your sales process. That's the other key. It tracks. Now, everyone in this call could have a different sales process. Sales process is, how are you going from a prospecting call all the way to happy customers who are buying more stuff? How are you doing it, right? Now, sales process is not sales methodology, but you have to have what that is. Now, here's the thing, and here's the test for you. Well-oiled machines know exactly where they are in the process and exactly what it's going to take to go to the next step. You cannot do that if you don't have sales process. There is a buyer-seller dance. We all know that. If you don't have sales process, you don't know the steps in your sales process. That means by default, you must follow the buyer's process. I want you to follow your process. I want you to say to yourself, is this worth pursuing? Is this my criteria? What is it? Now, you can do sales methodology, which is what you should be doing, because that overlays what you're doing in sales process. I don't care which one you pick. Obviously, I love it to be Sandler, but pick one, use it, stick with it. Don't make it situational. I want you to have a sales culture. In order to do that, you have to have sales process and you have to have sales methodology and you have to be tracking it and analyzing it through CRM. Fact. Okay, let's talk about something that I think you would be able to use instantaneously. I don't care which role you have. Manage clear next steps. Clear next steps. How many times have you showed up at a meeting and you had one agenda and they had another agenda or no agenda? Well, guess what? You had no clear next step. As a leader, you should be asking all the reps, what's the clear next step? And did they agree to it? Do they know that, or is that your agenda? Is that your perception? That's the only question Sandler would always ask me to know whether it was a good call. What's your clear next step? Oh, I'm going to call them back. That's garbage, right? You should make sure that you have, hey, this is the next call. Here's the purpose. Here's when it's happening. Here's who's attending. Here are the agenda items. And here's our preferred outcome, right? At the end of the meeting, we should be able to at least know this, whatever this is for you. If you say that at the end of every phone call, at the end of every call, when you show up, you're going to be much better off because you've now controlled what's happening. But if they say, look, I don't like that, well, now you know, right? Now you know, which is important. So look, I've covered some of these and we've got a very short amount of time, but tips for leaders: create the behavioral plan. Look, role play. You have to have a culture of role play. If you're not role playing, and role play's got a bad rap, right? Role play is practice. That's what they do every single day in professional sports. They role play. It's called practice. It's called drills. So go out and role play. I was super uncomfortable with role play, but the minute we started doing it, it's awesome. Like, for instance, my team role plays on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, bar none. And the confidence and conviction that they have when they hear this new pandemic, objection, boom, because they've been role playing, they know it. Your ears have to hear what your mouth says. That's super important. So I want you to make sure, as a sales leader, you're putting in the best position to have you and your team be as productive as possible. So hopefully, and I know we moved at light speed, and again, I will happily give you the 201, 301, 401 to anything that I've said, but let me kind of tell you what's going on before I give you the last tidbit. Certainly our next webinar with SalesForce is with Malcolm Gladwell. I've heard him speak in the past. good message. If you have the opportunity, please sign up for that. That's a big win, right? And then the other thing that I want to share with you is this. We didn't have enough time, but if you want to log on and register, this is 100% access. It's yours. It's free. It's also, you don't need a password. It's on Alexa. You can ask Alexa, how do I do a 30-second commercial? Boom, it's just going to pull it right out of the Sandler archives. How do I do this? How do I do that? All you need to do is ask Alexa what you want to know, and it'll pull the Sandler content for you. No passwords, no access. You can use it anytime that you want. My role, my goal is to help those customer-facing, revenue-generating individuals. And in today's world, listen, we're using the cutting edge technology, right? Everyone's going to voice. I think this will help you. So I've enjoyed the opportunity. I really do thank Adam for his opening and, being a Sandler fan since 1998. And I know we've got a lot of Sandler people on the line. And just out of curiosity, as we leave in the chat box, thumbs up or thumbs down if you're a Sandler client, ex or present. That would be super cool. And I look forward to meeting each and every one of you if it's possible. But until then, good selling.
I think it's safe for us to talk now.